My name is Thomas Grady. I'm 42. Born and raised in rural Kentucky. I've worked with my hands since I was old enough to carry a wrench. But no amount of grease, sweat, or callous fingers prepared me for the betrayal that came from my own blood. You ever look someone in the eye, someone you've known your entire life, and realize they don't see you as family anymore? That moment hit me the day I walked into Grady and Sons Auto, the family business my father built from the ground up, and saw my name scrubbed off the wall. Literally painted over. Gone. It used to read, Grady and Sons, Alan and Thomas, carrying on a legacy since '89. Now, it just said Grady's Garage. No. And Sons. No me. And my older brother Alan? He stood there like it was just another Tuesday. Just modernizing the place, he said, without flinching. No need to get sentimental. Sentimental? I'd been working in that garage since I was 15. When our dad had his first heart attack, I was the one holding the shop together, while Alan was off chasing his MBA in California. But somehow, now he was the face of the business. The decision maker. The only Grady that mattered. I own the business now, Tom, he said, arms folded, eyes cold. You're just an employee. And frankly, it's not working out anymore. That was the moment. The air went still. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. No warning. No discussion. No decency. Just erased. I remember walking out of that building in a daze. The same building I helped rebuild after the 2005 tornado. The same one I spent my weekends in, fixing up engines with my dad before he passed. Alan didn't just fire me. He buried me. But here's the part he didn't know. While he was busy playing CEO, printing new business cards, and pretending like I never existed, he forgot one small detail. The land the garage was built on? It's still in my name. Dad made sure of it years ago, after that first scare with his health. Said, Thomas, you're the steady one. You take care of this place if anything happens to me. Alan might have erased my name off the sign. But the ground beneath his shiny new office? That still belonged to me. And I hadn't even started fighting back yet. He took the business from me. But he didn't know. I still held the ground under his feet. You know, growing up in rural Kentucky, life didn't come with silver spoons or trust funds. But it came with something better, legacy. My dad, Carl Grady, started Grady and Sons Auto in a rusty old barn just off Route 17. He had 2 lifts, a pile of tools he collected from auctions, and 2 sons, me and Alan. Alan was always the smart one. Sharp in school, slick with numbers, always talking about scaling and growth. I was more like Dad. Quiet, hands-on. Give me an engine and a pair of gloves, and I could make something run smoother than new. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I remember those Sunday mornings, Dad whistling while checking oil pans, me handing him sockets, Alan sitting in the office writing invoices in that messy handwriting of his. We were a team. And when Mom died, we became even tighter. Grief didn't make us cold. It made us closer. Or so I thought. When Dad had his first heart attack in 2010, things changed. Alan had just graduated with his business degree from UCLA. He flew home, suited up, and told Dad, "Let me help streamline the operations." Dad agreed. He loved that word, streamline. Sounded like progress. Alan took over the office. I stayed on the floor. He brought in computers. Made us start using scheduling software. Hired a receptionist. Got us branded uniforms. The works. I won't lie, It felt good to see the place growing. Bookings doubled. Word spread. Alan was the face of the business now, shaking hands, networking, giving interviews for the local paper. And I was fine with that. See, I never wanted the spotlight. I just wanted to fix cars, make Dad proud, and keep the place running. After Dad passed in 2015, we both stood there holding his will, and Alan looked at me and said, 50-50, like always. We've got this, brother. I believed him. For years, we kept building. I managed the mechanics. He ran the front. We expanded from 4 bays to 8. Hired more people. Built a reputation that stretched across the county. I remember thinking, this is it. This is what Dad would have wanted. His sons. Together. There was even talk about starting a second location. Alan seemed so excited, drawing maps on napkins during lunch breaks, talking about franchising, maybe even taking the name national. But slowly, something began to change. He started showing up late, missing weekly planning meetings, taking calls behind closed doors. One day I caught him in the break room whispering into his phone, saying something about cutting the dead weight. When I walked in, he hung up fast and said it was about a supplier. I didn't press. That wasn't my way. But the seed had been planted. Then came the accounting changes. He moved the business finances into a separate system, something only he had access to. I asked why. He said it was cleaner this way, and that I didn't need to worry about it. Dad used to say, trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. And the drops were starting to spill. Still, I kept working, showing up early, training new techs, managing the shop floor. Because even when Alan got distant, I told myself, he's just under pressure. He's family. But maybe the biggest mistake I made was not speaking up when I started noticing the pay differences. I hadn't seen a raise in over 2 years. My checks were steady, but they didn't grow, even though business had nearly tripled. I figured it was just tight margins, overhead, expansion plans. And again, I trusted him. Looking back now, I see it so clearly. Every meeting I missed, he made sure I wasn't invited. Every new hire, they didn't report to me anymore. Slowly, quietly, he was cutting me out. But at the time, I didn't want to believe it. He was my brother. The guy who used to steal fries off my plate. Who cried on my shoulder when Mom passed. Who held my arm in church after Dad's funeral. You don't expect betrayal to come from the same blood that once wiped tears off your face. But that's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't come from enemies. It comes from those you trust most. And trust? I thought we were building something together. But now I realize he was building it for himself and leaving me behind one silent move at a time. It started small. Like a creaking floorboard you keep stepping over until one day, your foot goes right through. The first thing I noticed was the office door. Alan used to leave it cracked open. Now it was always shut. Locked sometimes, even when he wasn't inside. Then came the meetings. I'd walk into the shop and see a few of our guys whispering about something, then suddenly straightening up when they saw me. Everything good? I'd ask. Yeah, boss. All good. But it didn't feel good. Something was off. I tried brushing it aside, telling myself I was just overthinking. That Alan had always been private, always trying to carry more weight on his shoulders. But it got worse. One afternoon, I walked into the office to grab a wrench set catalog, and his laptop was open. On the screen was a spreadsheet labeled Ownership Breakdown. I wasn't listed on it. Not as a partner. Not as an employee. Not even as a shareholder. Just one name. Alan Grady. I froze. Before I could click anything else, he walked in, saw me at his desk, and for the first time in my life, he looked angry that I was there. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Just grabbing the catalog," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Didn't mean to snoop." He walked over, closed the laptop, and forced a smile. "It's just projections," he said. "Nothing official." But the warmth in his voice was gone, like someone flipping a switch. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out the original Dad had signed. 50-50. It was clear. Unmistakable. We agreed to leave it all under one LLC, with both our names on every document. So what changed? Why wasn't my name anywhere on that spreadsheet? Over the next few weeks, the patterns got clearer. He started avoiding our usual lunch runs. Started talking to our suppliers directly, without looping me in. Then he moved all business banking to an account I didn't have access to. I confronted him once. Just lightly. "Hey," I said, "I noticed I'm not listed on the vendor emails anymore." He waved it off. "Just trying to streamline things, man. Too many cooks in the kitchen, you know?" I laughed, nodded. But it didn't sit right. Because I wasn't just a cook. I built this kitchen. One morning, I got a call from a client, one of our oldest. He said, "Hey, Thomas, why'd you leave the shop? Thought you and Alan ran it together?" I blinked. "What do you mean, leave?" He said he'd come in last week and asked for me. The receptionist told him I'd moved on to other ventures. I stared at the phone in silence. "Thomas," he said. "I'm still there," I replied. "Every single day." After that call, my gut told me this wasn't confusion. It was a cover-up. He was rewriting the narrative, erasing me from the shop's identity, one little story at a time. Even the uniforms had changed. The new shirts didn't say Grady and Sons anymore. Just Grady Auto Group. I asked Alan, "When did we become a group?" He shrugged. "Branding stuff. Don't worry about it." But I was worried. Every night I sat in my truck after work, staring at the building Dad built with his bare hands. And I'd wonder, how long until that name disappears too? One weekend, I showed up early to get some inventory sorted. The place was dark. Alan's office door was cracked open, for once. Inside, on his desk, I saw two things that made my chest go cold. A folder labeled Buyout Agreements, with my name listed as a former partner. And behind it, a deed. A property deed. My property. You see, when Dad passed, he didn't just leave us the business. He left me the land. The ground the shop was built on. He'd made it clear in his will. Thomas gets the land. Alan gets the patents and office rights. The shop belongs to both, but the dirt belongs to Thomas. Alan had always known that. But this deed, this forged document, it had his name on it. I took a photo, shoved the folder back exactly as I found it, and walked out. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because at that moment, something inside me clicked. Something cold. Quiet. Focused. All this time, I'd been waiting for my brother to come back to me. The guy who used to split peanut butter sandwiches with me on Mom's old porch swing. The guy who called me T and joked about us retiring on a lake together. But that guy? He was gone. And the man sitting in that office now? He didn't know it yet, but he was building his empire on land he didn't own. I stayed silent. I kept smiling. But I started watching. And then one night, his phone lit up at 2:07 a.m. You can live in denial for a long time. You tell yourself, maybe it's a mistake, or maybe he's just going through something. You bend and bend and bend until one night you snap. For me, that moment came on a Wednesday. It was 2:07 a.m. I hadn't been sleeping well. The thoughts wouldn't stop circling, like a dog chasing its tail in a cage. So I did what I always did when my brain wouldn't rest. I went for a walk. I passed by Alan's house, not intentionally. We lived close, a couple blocks apart. Lights were off. Seemed quiet. But as I passed, I noticed something. His truck was gone. That was strange. He never worked late, not unless I was with him. I kept walking. Cleared my head. But something in my gut said, go back. Just go back. So I circled the block. And there it was, Alan's truck, parked behind the shop, lights on in the office. At 2:24 a.m., I crept toward the side window, staying low behind the dumpster. I wasn't proud of what I was doing. Felt like a kid sneaking out to spy on Santa. But this wasn't childhood. This was my legacy. My father's name. My land. My life. I peeked through the blinds. Alan was inside. Not alone. There was a man with him. Mid-40s. Slick back hair. Lawyer vibes. They were going over paperwork. I couldn't hear much. But one word popped out again and again. Transfer. That word burned itself into my mind. Transfer of rights. Transfer of deed. Transfer of control. Alan nodded along like it was nothing. Then he did something that shattered everything. He pulled out Dad's will. The original one. The one that said 50-50. And without hesitation, he ripped it in half. I felt my knees give out. Had to steady myself against the wall. He knew. He knew what he was doing. This wasn't confusion or miscommunication. This was a plan. This was war. And just as I was turning to leave, I saw Alan pull something from a drawer. A pen and a fresh deed. The man slid it toward him. Alan signed it. Calm. Cold. Then he smiled. I backed away from the window like I was being chased. That night, I didn't go home. I went to my father's grave. Stood there in the dark, hands shaking, heart shattered. Dad, I whispered, he's doing it. He's really doing it. He's cutting me out. I waited for something. Wind through the trees, a whisper on the breeze, something that might feel like his answer. But all I got was silence. And in that silence, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight him with fists. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't beg. No. I'd fight him with the very thing he thought I didn't have. Patience. That night was the end of my old life. And the start of something new. I walked away from that grave with a single thought in my mind. He just declared war on the wrong person. I didn't cry that night. I started planning. The next morning, I was back at the shop. Smiling. You have to understand. This was no longer personal. This was surgical. Alan thought he'd cut me out. He thought I'd walk away like a defeated brother. He forgot I was raised by the same man who built this business brick by brick, who taught us both how to work, how to hustle, and how to strike when it mattered most. I started slow. Step 1. Information. Every document Alan had moved, I already had a digital backup of, but I needed more. So I paid a quiet visit to the county registrar's office. Smiled politely. Asked a few questions about land titles and deed histories. Then I asked about my father's original property papers. The clerk gave me a look. Those records are sealed unless you're the legal landowner. I slid my ID across the counter. She paused. I'm sorry, sir. Our file still lists the land under your name. I smiled. Exactly. That was the moment I knew Alan had missed something. Yes, he controlled the business. The day-to-day operations. The cash. The clients. But the land? The dirt it stood on? It was mine. My father had transferred the property to me directly 2 years before he passed, for tax reasons. Alan probably assumed the shop and the land were one and the same. They weren't. Step 2. Proof. I hired a quiet private investigator. I gave him one job: find everything Alan was doing behind my back. Late-night meetings, transfers, any false documents filed, any new company names opened under his control. Within 2 weeks, I had a 40-page dossier. Alan had created a shell company in Nevada. He planned to sell off part of our family business to an outside buyer, one who had no idea I even existed in the records. I smiled when I read that, because now I had leverage. Step 3. Legal muscle. I called a family friend, Daniel Reeves, former JAG attorney. Smart, deadly calm. I laid out everything. He didn't even blink. Let me guess, he said. Alan thinks he's already won. Exactly. Daniel cracked his knuckles. Then let's make him feel like a king, right before we pull the floor out from under him. We got to work. Filed for an injunction to halt any business asset sales. Served Alan quietly, through his assistant, during a board meeting. He didn't even know it was coming from me. I made sure of that. Then I went silent again. Step 4. Timing. See, revenge isn't just about what you do. It's about when you do it. Alan had invited some buyers to tour the shop. He was trying to pitch them on a merger. He probably imagined himself sipping bourbon, bragging about how he built everything from scratch. So I waited until he brought them onto the land, my land. Then I showed up. Calm. Casual. Dressed like I'd just come from a jog. Alan froze the second he saw me. Hey, little bro, he said, that fake smile spreading across his face. Didn't expect to see you here today. I nodded. Yeah, I figured I should stop by. Didn't want your guests to make any decisions without knowing the full picture. His smile twitched. What do you mean? I turned to the buyers. Gentlemen, I'm the legal owner of the land this building stands on. My brother's been running the business, but forgot to mention he doesn't actually own the property. Silence. I handed each of them a copy of the deed, with my name. Then, just for fun, I handed Alan a folder. Inside, the injunction, the investigator's report, a copy of Dad's original will, and a cease and desist. You can continue your tour, I said, but you might want to consult your legal teams before signing anything. The buyers left in under 10 minutes. Alan looked like someone had unplugged his brain. But I wasn't done. Step 5. Public clarity. I made a quiet call to the local paper. They'd been writing about the Monroe brothers' business for years. I gave them a story they couldn't resist: betrayal, legal drama, a fight for legacy. When the article dropped, Alan's phone didn't stop ringing. Investors pulled out. Staff started asking questions. Old clients demanded to know who actually owned what. And I still hadn't raised my voice once. He came to my door a few nights later. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, voice hoarse. I looked him dead in the eye. "You erased my name from the business, Alan. But you didn't know. I am the foundation." He said nothing, just stood there, And for the first time in years, he looked small, like a man who finally realized the game was over. She thought I'd never fight back. But she forgot I've been trained to win wars without raising my voice. It all came down to one date, the court hearing. Alan thought it was just a nuisance. He told mutual friends that it was some paperwork mix-up, and that it would be over in minutes. But I knew the storm he was walking into. I hadn't just hired a lawyer. I had built a case. Chain of title. Financial irregularities. Misuse of authority. Attempted fraudulent sale. All backed with timestamps, screenshots, PI footage, and Alan's own voice from a recorded call with a potential buyer saying, "Yeah, my brother? He's long gone. I'm the sole owner now." He didn't know I had that. The courtroom was quiet when we entered. Alan came in with his usual charm, waving to the judge like it was a formality, smiling like he always had the upper hand. He hadn't brought a lawyer. I had 3. When the judge read the preliminary findings, Alan's smirk slipped. When we played the recordings, he turned pale. The judge asked if he had legal representation. Alan mumbled that he hadn't expected this to be a big deal. The judge stared him down. "Mr. Monroe, this is very much a big deal. You attempted to sell property you do not own. You misled potential buyers and failed to notify your legal co-founder of critical business decisions. These are not clerical errors. They are breaches of contract and possibly criminal conduct." That's when Alan looked at me. Not with hate. With fear. My attorney stood up and calmly laid out everything. The land, legally mine. The business, founded equally. Alan's attempt to erase my ownership, fraudulent. Then came the nail in the coffin. Daniel turned to the judge and said, "Your Honor, not only did Mr. Alan Monroe attempt to misrepresent ownership, he diverted funds from the company account into a private holding." Alan opened his mouth. But we had the bank statements. My brother collapsed into his chair. The judge ordered an immediate halt to all of Alan's operations. His accounts were frozen. The sale was blocked. And a court-appointed forensic accountant was assigned to review every dollar that had moved under Alan's control in the past 18 months. He was finished. But I didn't press criminal charges. People asked me why. They said I could have sent him to jail, and honestly, I could have. But I wasn't in this to destroy him. I just wanted the truth to win. And that's exactly what happened. Within weeks, I was reinstated as co-owner. But I didn't stop there. I made a deal. Alan could keep running the shop, but under my conditions. He would pay rent on the land. He would sign an acknowledgement of co-founding to be displayed on the wall of the business with both our names. And every single month, he'd have to write me a rent check, signed with his own hand. At first, he was furious. Then he realized it was better than prison. He agreed. Some called it mercy. I called it justice with a mirror. Now, every morning he walks into my land to run our family business, he's reminded. He tried to bury me, but I was the ground he stood on. The courtroom went silent. I played the audio file, and everyone heard what he really thought of me. It's been 2 years since that courtroom day. I don't walk into the shop anymore. Not because I can't. I own the land, and my name is back on the walls where it belongs. But because I've moved on. After the storm passed, I realized something. I didn't want to rebuild that business. Not with Alan. Not with the past hanging over every counter, every corner. So, I handed over day-to-day operations to a neutral manager. Someone who didn't grow up in our family. Someone who didn't know the fights, the bitterness, or the betrayal. and I started fresh. I used the rental income and savings I protected, and finally did what I'd been dreaming about long before Alan ever got greedy. I opened a small woodworking studio outside town. No big signs. No employees. Just me, a few old tools, and my dog Leo. I build furniture by hand. Nothing fancy. Tables, chairs, benches. Things people can use. Things that last. And for the first time in years, I sleep peacefully. Alan still sends the check every month. Sometimes he tries to make small talk. Sends texts with old photos, or a joke, like nothing ever happened. I reply when I feel like it, but I never forget. And I never pretend. Because here's what I learned through all of this, and maybe it's the only thing that kept me sane when my own brother tried to erase me. Blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. You can share a last name, a house, even a business. But if someone looks at you as an obstacle instead of a partner, they were never truly with you to begin with. Alan taught me that. And ironically, so did I. Because the same quiet patience I used to build the case, I now use to build my peace. Brick by brick. Board by board. Life by life. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not out for revenge. I got what I needed, not to win, but to remember. That sometimes, the most powerful move, is walking away stronger, not louder. He tried to steal the legacy our father left us, but I was the one who protected it, not for him, not for payback, but for me. Because I knew deep down that the land wasn't just property. It was proof that I mattered.